I'm Mary Beth McAndrews from Dread Central. I am super stoked to
Oh,
talk to you today about this movie.
yeah.
So, first question, it's super basic, but starting with Shayna, what idea for Run Sweetheart Run? Like, what was kind of like the seed of inspiration for the script for you?
Yeah, I mean, the seed of the inspiration was a date that I went on in my 20s that was, in the Hollywood Hills with a guy who looked great on paper. He was handsome, he was successful, he was wealthy. I was broke. I was waiting tables at the time, and everybody was like, "Ooh, this is going to be a good one, Shauna." And I got in my little black dress and I went to his house and we had a date and went back inside with him, and it turned into a really bad experience. And I ended up having to run out the door, and I ran all the way home from Hollywood Hills to West LA with no shoes. And that was about it was about that night. That was the initial real, like, what am I most scared of? I'm in horror. What would I be truly the most scared of? It isn't Chucky or ghouls or demons or haunted houses. It's men. That is what speaks to me. And I have to have a personal connection to this movie. And that's what it was.
Holy shit, I'm so sorry. Like, I unfortunately feel like most of us women have had these experiences, and that's why this movie, I think,
Who doesn't?
hits
Every single
these
one of us.
every like I have a similar story, and I'm assuming Effie, you probably have a like
Yes.
at least
Yeah.
one, and it's like I think having knowing that, which is awful, it really does give that context of like we've all had these horrendous experiences that could have turned out like that, and I appreciate seeing how blunt that is on screen. I think you're very obvious, like it's we need that kind of like very much like this is the violence we face as women, and
Well,
what
it's not something we want to stay quiet about, right? Because
no,
quiet people
yeah.
don't listen. No one's listening. No one's listening now. So let's scream it. Maybe they will hear. I don't know what it will take to change this. It needs to be
Yeah.
changed. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be as loud as possible, and I'm not going to apologize for being loud, which I
Yeah, and
normally
then
probably would have done.
well, and but also like in the movie, we even have Ella's character apologizing for correcting him, and
Of
I
course.
find myself in these positions apologizing. So it's but yeah. Anyway, but Effie, at what step
Yes.
did you get involved in this project, and like what drew you to being involved in this
I
film?
have to say, thank you for that. I'm a huge, huge, huge horror fan. Huge
Hell
horror
yeah!
fan.
As you can
And
tell,
I'm like,
obviously
yeah,
me
I was
too.
gonna say, I was looking at all of it. I was like, I know all of this, girl. I
Obviously.
love all of it, all of it, all of it. And I've always been like a huge horror nerd. And so when watching this, and I've also been Black and a woman all my life. Shocking. So,
Huh.
I don't know if you know about this. But one of this, in a lot of times in horror films, we're not there. You know what I mean? If you're like, we were like, maybe like the Omega Man back in the day, 1971, you had Blackula, you know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah.
we aren't typically there, and we certainly not saving ourselves. And so when I was
Yeah.
able to watch this, and I was like, dope. I love the fact that the woman actually saves herself, and it takes other women to actually come in and to be like, let's take this let's take this person
No,
out, this demon out. Do you know what I mean? I love that. And what I also loved, much I was like high five and like this genius that Shauna had was being like, oh, did you know that you made a movie about the blue-eyed devil? Like, I grew up, like, I'm a
oh,
lady of the
yes.
feel me? Do you remember that? And there's a saying that we had, especially down south, and my granny would say, like, the blue-eyed devil, which is like, looks beautiful on paper, lovely, but you know that, like, ooh, like, cross him, get in his thing, like, no good's coming of it. And anyway, so those were the things that I saw that I was like, ooh, a woman saving herself, actually, woman of color, actually being the protagonist, and also bringing up something that, like, you know, that we all recognize, and being like that,
Yeah.
the blue-eyed devil, like the thing that's
Yeah.
like a little too good to be true,
Yeah.
because it is.
Well, and in this movie, I mean, there we have a woman of color lead, and there a lot of this cast are women of color, which is again in horror we don't
Oh,
see
did you
that
get
a
that?
lot. Yeah,
Oh,
it's like
fancy. Oh my
well, and
goodness.
again, because like we have the layers of obviously the white guy is preying on just like women who we all like in true crime or like the lesser like, we could talk about that forever about how women of color are ignored and all that stuff, but there's a lot of violence towards women in this movie, and I think it's important. But was there ever any concern in having so much kind of like violence against the female body against all of these other women not just Cherie's body, but all the other women that help her. Especially, there's a scene in the house with her ex-boyfriend's current partner and things like that. Like, was there ever any concern in depicting all of this violence against women in a movie about violence against women?
Sure. I mean, I think that's something that I struggled with, the entire time we were shooting is what
Yeah.
I want to see, as a survivor myself, I did not want to shoot a rape scene, and I didn't. And what I tried to do with much of the violence, and it's odd that it feels like an incredibly violent movie when so much of the violence does actually happen on screen. And what I tried to do, even when the violence is happening, is detach it from the person. So I feel I shot her feet as she was being strangled. I wasn't close on her, or I didn't show Ethan in the frame while he's strangling her. It was just Cherie, things. I was tried to be very conscientious in that house where so many people get killed. It's all sound design, it's what she hears in the bathtub. And the moments where Cherie does get hurt it was hard. It had to be a really safe place. We had to all talk about it. It had to be consensual, that we all agreed this is what we were going to do. And, it was, I'm glad you brought it up because it wasn't something that I didn't struggle with almost every day.
Yeah. And I mean, like, as a survivor and as someone who loves studying movies about like rape revenge and sexual assault, I think there's like really interesting conversations to be had about violence on camera, which is why I'm bringing it up. Because I think it is like a situation where I think you should show violence. I mean, I'm of the opinion that violence on camera against women isn't a bad thing, but it's intention. And I think a lot of these movies directed by men have not the best intentions, I think. And it was interesting to see your take on it. And I like that a lot. And I mean, you make it very feminine. This movie is very much about periods as well, which I mean, you have tampon flinging, which we need more of in horror. I'm going to go on like a new, like, I don't know, the campaign of more tampons in horror, because I really love how you have multiple instances of her like pulling out a tampon, squeezing the blood on her face. And I wanted to hear more about destigmatizing something
Yes.
that happens to all of us usually once a month, like, and including that part, like that aspect as a pretty integral part of the plot.
Well, Julia Roberts gets her period, but we never see it. Like, like it's something
I
that
want that on a t-shirt.
Exactly. And then Julia's going to be like, I do. Right? I'm perimenopausal, but I do. Who knows? Right?
I had a huge period shame growing up. I was one of those that would whisper the word tampon. Like, do you have a tampon? Or, was really self-conscious. Like, I didn't want, is my pad showing? I was brought up in that way. And I thought, this isn't how it should be for women. And not only am I going to show the reality, but it's going to save her life. And this lifeblood she's going to reclaim it and use it to her own advantage, because that is our lifeblood. And I wanted to celebrate it. And like the happiest I've ever been is when I like brought this intern at Blumhouse in. He was probably like 21 and he watched that freeway scene. And I said, well, what do you think happened in that scene? How would you describe it? And he goes, her period saves her life. I was like, yes, that's so awesome. Yes, it was great.
You got it. That's amazing. Well, I have to wrap, but Shana and Effie, thank you so much for chatting with me today about Run Sweetheart Run.
Thank you. Thank you.